Hello, Broncos country, and welcome to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. I'm Ronald White, and this way I have my co host, Thomas Hall. Hey, Thomas, how's your Saturday been so far?
It's good, man. I'm getting pumped for the draft. It's coming up. I know the Broncos don't have a whole lot of draft picks, but I always have enjoyed the draft since I was a kid. So, and it's done nothing but get more exciting. The NFL has really created a lot of excitement about the draft, and more so than any other sport. So I'm ready to go. I'm kind of ready. So, but yeah, Saturday's been good. How about you?
Same here. So I'm in South Carolina this weekend, and again the weather here has been great. In the mid 80s. So far
Nice.
so good. And I'm the same way. I love the off season, the draft time. Looking at who the Broncos can target, looking at all these mocks. Um, and so it's been really fun and exciting. So we want to say a few hellos here to a few people that have joined us. Again, we have Mike S coming in here saying, "What's up, Thomas, Ron, Scott, Dylan, and Broncos Country?" Well, again, thank you, Mike, for your comment. Much appreciated. We know we always appreciate you having us in the chat. And then we have another super chat coming in here from David McGrath. Thank you, David. We appreciate your generosity as always. He says, "Good evening, Broncos country. Tom, Ron, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Buckham times two." I love it. MHH for life, Denver Broncos for life. Well, we appreciate that, David, as always. Thank you. And then we have Gyla Maples coming in here with a 1999 super sticker. We appreciate you, Gyla, as always. If you have any comments in here, please put them in. Oh, we do see a few here. Hello, everyone. And she also says, ready to go. Thank you very much. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you
it.
so much for the support. It's great to see everybody jumping in already with the support. People jumping in, saying hi, and welcoming everybody. So welcome everyone to the show, man. This is
Yes.
Saturday night. We really appreciate you all being here because it is hard to get in here on a Saturday night. I know people have lives and everything, but we really appreciate you guys coming in on here live. And the nice thing for us is we get to hear your comments and we get to have a talk back and forth. So we really, really appreciate it, and of course the support from Gyla and David. Thank you so much. But we got a pretty good show tonight, right? I mean, I think I think the people are still out there really trying to rub the Broncos nose in last year, and
Yeah.
we've got this NFL.com coming out. We've got what Greg Rosenthal comes out with his GM rankings and
Yeah.
has George Paton last, which was unfathomable to think, when the offseason started last year, people were singing his praises. So it's going to be interesting to see what your take is, Ron, and see what the takes are some from the commenters. I have my own, obviously, so we'll get into it. But let's grab a couple more people. We got a lot of people coming in here. We got Mike S coming in saying, looking forward to the show. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Appreciate it. And I'll just have you know that I think you wanted to hear something about Ed McCaffrey on Legends of Mile High. So that's coming up next Friday. So don't miss out on that. It's a good one. And who else we got in here? We're by
Yeah.
ourselves again, so nobody's in the background helping us out. So while we fumble around, hopefully we can keep entertaining you and make sure we keep the comments going. So
Yes, definitely. We
yeah,
got Amy in here from Facebook. Thank you, Amy Alice. She says, "Good evening, Broncos country." Well, a good evening to you, Amy. Hope your Saturday is going well. And then also Dom Amelia. Thank you, Don. And he
Dom's
says,
here.
"Good evening, Thomas, Ron, Scott, and Broncos country, Denver Broncos for life." Well, again, thank you, and good evening, Dom, to you as well. So yeah, let's before we get into some more, let's get into um, the NFL.com rankings of these general managers.
Yeah,
On NFL.com, there has been a list that has been recently published with a ranking of the current NFL GMs per each
yeah,
team. And I believe, and I'll go back and look at the list, Thomas, but I believe Howie Roseman was ranked first
yeah,
from
yep,
the Philadelphia Eagles. And then our GM, George Payton, has been ranked last.
Last. Yeah,
And
last
that,
for anybody that has at least 2 years experience, right?
yes,
So
yes,
he didn't rank the those new GMs, of
yes,
course, but
yes,
yeah,
yes. And that's been troubling. Of that took me by surprise. And
it is.
obviously, we can go by recency bias. It's all recency bias, and based on what happened last year.
That's correct.
Obviously, it was an epic fail of the Nathaniel Hackett experiment with Russell Wilson. Of course, it didn't go anywhere. And the Broncos finished what 5-12. Then they had last offense in the league, and it was a total disaster. So you can look at it from the sense of a lot these rankings were based on what transpired last year. But we know that since George Payton's tenure with the Broncos, George Payton has done nothing but good for this team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the players that he drafted, Patrick Surtain, right? Even the move, and I know it was when you look back at the move to trade for Russell Wilson, of course it didn't pan out from what we saw last year. But even the move to get a 9-time Pro Bowler in Russell Wilson, I think anybody looking back at that move would have done the same thing. So,
Absolutely.
looking at those just from a glance, it's not justifiable for him to be ranked at that position.
Right. Yeah, and let's just say I'll talk about before I talk about what he said in the article. I'm just going to say hi to Donnie Wentz coming in from
Hey,
Facebook.
Donnie.
Thank you for coming in here and being here. Saying I went to my first Broncos game last year, Seahawks Week 1. Awesome. Too bad that they lost that game. And Colts Thursday night in Denver. Man, Thursday night games, that's great. And can't wait to go to the meet and greet this year. And I can't wait to go either. We'll see you there. Hopefully, it'd be great to meet you. So thanks for coming in
Thank you,
and
Donnie.
with that comment. And we'll see you at the meet and greet, Donnie. So yeah, so from my perspective, this is the gist of what he said about George Payton. He said that the reason he's ranked last is because of the Russell Wilson trade and hiring Hackett, and then he also talked a little bit about this year's draft. So, like you said, Ron, you can't. I mean, it's pretty tough to judge him on the Russell Wilson trade. Yeah, it didn't pan out this year, but this is going to be a moot point if he comes out. I'm on the record of saying that he's going to have a big bounce back year. I think he will. That goes out the window. They're judging 1 year of Russell Wilson in a bad offense. So, in my opinion, that's kind of everybody, like you said, everybody would have made that trade. Anybody that was needing a quarterback would have made that trade. And if you think about the trade, really from the perspective of what they gave up, 2 first rounders, 2 second rounders, it's a bit of a bit rich, but not bad for like you said, a 9-time Pro Bowler. And then they gave away 3 players, and one of them isn't on the team anymore. Drew Lock's the backup. Shelby Harris has been cut, and then you have Noah Fant, who wasn't any better there than he was in Denver. So, I'm not really gonna knock George Payton too much on that. I will say the hire of Hackett was bad, but again, that was another. There were other GMs that were high on him, and Denver landed him, and that was that wasn't a huge surprise, but that was bad. And then I'll just jump. I'm going to grab Gary Palmer here, and then I'm going to talk about this year's draft just for a little bit, and then get your take on it. So Gary Palmer, the legend, is here tonight. Thank you
Yes.
with this
Thank you,
super
Gary.
chat. We appreciate the support, and we're glad you're here. And he says, "Hey guys in Broncos country, looking forward to your takes on the GP saga. Go Broncos and buck 'em." Yeah, for sure. And we're that's it is a bit of a surprise for him to be last. I could see him getting knocked down some pegs, but to rank him last, and to come back and talk about the draft, right? This year's draft. One, it's way too early to be saying, knocking George Payton on that draft. But here's the deal. It's probably because Nick Bonino didn't pan out right away. But that's the thing. Everybody knew he was a bit of a project. He needed to gain weight, get some strength, and he needed to learn some more pass rushing moves. He's a 2nd-round pick with a lot of potential. But then you also have to understand you've got Greg Dulcich, 3rd-rounder, who's probably going to be the starter this year. You've got Demaryi Mathis, 4th-rounder, who's probably going to be a starter this year. They're both penciled in as the starter unless something major happens. And then you've also got 2 defensive linemen who are going to play major roles because they lost 2 starters and they only replaced 1. The Broncos lost 2 starters and replaced 1. So that means that Matt Henningsen, the 6th-round draft choice, is going to play a big role. And so is Ozarike. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Uzurike. I was a
He's going to play.
Uzurike. Yeah.
Those are significant, significant draft choices that are going to be playing significant time. That who are late round picks, and then finally you have De'Aaron Turner Yell, who is the fourth safety. They haven't brought in another safety, so he's going to be playing major time. So you can't look at this last year's draft. What we're going to see them. What we're seeing taking place now. You can't say that was a bad draft. What is your thoughts, Ron?
And I agree, Thomas. It's again the Broncos didn't pick till the third round last year, right? So you it's too early to say. Granted, I know George Payton's been in the role for quite some time now, but it's still too early to have him ranked dead last on the list, right? It's what he did with the draft last year. Of course, where they started to make those selections last year, it's going to take some time for those folks, as you mentioned, Nick Benito, Greg Dulcich, to really reach their full potential. And we saw
Sure.
the flashes last year from some of these draft picks. Now, notwithstanding Nick Medito, understanding with him, he has to kind of, you know, gain some weight, kind of get more in shape to be that edge rush presence in the middle that we're wanting. But Greg Dulcich for sure, obviously Damari Mathis, who in my mind, number two corner already outside of PS2. Granted, he had his growing pains early last year, but we saw that be ironed out to the fact that he can be opposite of PS2. And Turner Yell and Aruzarike. We saw some good from them. And again, after that rookie curve, we know it's going to take some time that first year. We should start to see with new coaching established and in place, we should start to see these draft picks reach their full potential and pay dividends moving forward. So, in my mind, I'm with you where the ranking of last, it's just really unwarranted.
Right.
And I can see it being more so kind of average, maybe toward that 10 to 15 range for George Payton, because we can all agree that Nathaniel Hackett higher is a big knock on the resume,
Sure.
right? But everything else George Payton has done so far, I would say, has been good.
Well, I'm not gonna jump in there and say he's been great. I have some issues with him, and so does Lawrence Rivera coming in with Facebook stars. We really appreciate it, Lawrence. We appreciate you being here. He's saying I'm knocking Peyton. We could have got Eric Bieniemy. Watch him work this year in Washington. Is Lawrence's comment? I don't think that Bieniemy was ever going to be in the Mile High City based on whatever happened in the past. I'm not going to get into it. I just don't think that was ever an option. Hope I wish him well in Washington, and who knows? I think the Broncos got a good coach in Peyton, but and so I think that'll be okay. My knock on was right away on George Payton was two things. First it stemmed from him not valuing great edge rushers. Number one, let Von Miller walk. I mean, he got something in trade, but for a future Hall of Famer who was the face of the franchise, that was a bit of a tough one for me. But the one that really got me was his signing of Randy Gregory, who never was on the field. He's never reliable to be on the field, and they gave him 50 some $1 million to come here, and I think it was even more. I don't remember his contract, but they gave him a pretty sizable contract, and it was a huge risk. That's where I started to say, okay, Peyton is struggling a little bit in some of his decisions. I think he's a good drafter, and I think that taking him out of the not having him full control of who to hire and all of that with some checks and balances, I think is a good thing. And I think he's gonna, he did a really good job, negotiating, doing the trades and stuff like that. I don't think that he's a bad GM, but I also don't think that he's is unfallible, right? And that
Yeah.
started with Von Miller and then Randy Gregory for me. So that kind of stung a little bit. And then obviously Russell Wilson not panning out, but I can't fault him for that because everybody in the need of a quarterback would have probably made that trade. So
Yeah, and another slight knock. I agree with you, Thomas. Mostly, I think another slight knock for me. I know of course, we'll see how McGlinchey pans out, which I don't expect anything less than solid to great on the right tackle position. But drafting or at least addressing the need for right tackle earlier can also be another knock on George Payton. Having stability at right tackle and just the offensive line in general. Now with Peyton in place, and now that Peyton kind of have formed that relationship, and I know there was collaboration for these free agency moves to get the offensive line more intact, but this could have been addressed earlier in year one and year two, right, of George Payton's tenure. So I would say to your point of, yeah, you're right, him not being infallible. Of course, there were holes with George Payton as the GM, not addressing that offensive line a little bit more carefully, specifically at right tackle, is also problematic for me.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they've been trying to address right tackle forever. They haven't had a good right tackle since Orlando Franklin moved to guard and then was gone. So, it's one of those things that they're going to have to address. I mean, they're going to have to keep trying to draft some offensive linemen to keep this rolling, in my opinion. So,
I agree. And we got Austin H coming in here with a 199 super chat. Thank you, Austin. We appreciate your generosity. He asks, who do you guys believe is actually the worst GM?
my mind goes right to the Cleveland Browns GM Andrew Berry. I mean, talking about getting a quarterback that didn't pan out, who had a lot more problems than Russell Wilson, plus all the stuff they gave up, guaranteed contract. I mean, if you're going to judge George Payton on the Russell Wilson move, I think you got to judge Andrew Berry on that Deshaun Watson trade. I mean, that's where my mind goes right away. But there's some others, right? There's some others for me that, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of what they've been, doing in Houston. Maybe that'll turn around, but that's kind of a mess. And until they can make have some wins, I'm not going to say that Nick Casario is a great GM either. So there's a couple people I would put, behind George Payton, especially the one that made a worse trade in my mind than the Russell Wilson trade. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm with you. I say with the one, Cleveland, Houston, to Arizona come to my mind. I think the one for Arizona, he stepped away, right? I believe this year, but I think with kind of what's going on there with Arizona, I know D Hop is on the outs possibly, and then the Kyler Murray, and then some of the other things. But I would say he's probably low on the list, and Houston for sure. The GM of Houston probably is probably at not the last, but probably close down to the worst GM in my opinion.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. I guess they didn't rank. They weren't able to rank. He didn't. The article didn't rank the those that didn't have at least 2 seasons. So so the new guy in Arizona, Monty Austin Fort, I think Austin Fort. Yeah, he's new. So I guess you can't really rank him behind, so to speak. But of those that they ranked, I don't know why they would have the similar type of problems, that with the quarterback, because Deshaun Watson didn't play well either. So I'm sorry, he didn't play well. And he has a lot more baggage than Russell Wilson, and they ended up costing a lot more in my mind than Russell Wilson. So why he's ranked several places ahead of George Payton is kind of mind-boggling to me, because the Cleveland Browns have not done squat,
They haven't.
for years. And so I don't know, that would probably be the first one that comes to my mind, Austin. So thank you so much for the support. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you, Austin. And we got William Hayes coming in here. Thank you, William, for your comment here. Much appreciated. It's like a good comment here. So he states all the Broncos' problems stem from all rookie coaches and a quarterback that was way out in left field. And again, thank you, William. And I can see that being truthful to an extent of you have a new rookie head coach with all of these rookie new assistant coaches, position coaches, and a quarterback where his style of play did not fit the scheme of what the head coach wants. So from there, William, you're right. That's why Russell Wilson was out in left field because the scheme and Russell Wilson's style of play it just didn't go hand in hand. So you saw a lot of you know plays being left out in the field, Russell being lost as he was doing the snapbacks, and it was just a disaster from the jump. So now that we have a competent coach in place with Sean Payton, with an emphasis on how to maximize Russell Wilson's skill set, we should see a lot of these problems start to go away.
Yeah, and I like I said, but I've said many times, Russell Wilson's. I'm predicting a bounce back season, a good bounce, but really, really good bounce back season, and that's for a couple reasons. Like you said, the offense was a mess last year. Hackett was in over his head, like you said, just rookie coach who just didn't have the leadership skills to really run the team well. Didn't prepare them the right way. I mean, I think the team was not just a mess because their offense was terrible. They were committing dumb penalties. They were leading the league in penalties for a long time. I don't know if they finished the season leading the league in penalties. I think they did. Untimely mistakes. Nobody could step up and make a play when it mattered. So there were a lot of problems moving on from just Hackett being there. And then you have to consider they had a rash of injuries, one of the most injury riddled teams in the NFL. So that didn't help. So I think the comments about being out in left field, yeah, he looked lost, but I don't think he will look lost going forward. I think, like you said, Ron, Sean Payton's going to come in, make the team better coached, more applicable to their skill sets. And you're going to see that when people are talking about the Russell Wilson trade after a couple of years, they're probably going to be saying it was a lot better than it looks today. So I think that's the problem. I don't think you're going to have that problem this year. You got a good coach.
Yeah.
Whether I have issues with his character or not, he's still a good coach.
Yeah. You have competency at the coaching level. And I think from there, we'll see how the Broncos do. But competency at the coaching level with a new scheme in place. We'll see play designs that fit Russell Wilson's skill set with the heavy focus or emphasis on the running game. You will see a different offense.
Yeah.
And then with this different offense, of course, there'll be more points scored, and then the defense should be able to hold their own. You should start to see more wins stack up in the win column. So we have Malcolm in here. Malcolm Brown. Thank you, Malcolm. He says hello from Homer, Alaska. Well, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for coming in from Alaska, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you very much.
So I just want to just address, and maybe some people in the comments have some thoughts as well. I mean, part of the thing was he knocked him for his draft this year, but as I lined out at the beginning, like it's not going to turn out to be a bad draft. I think they're focusing on two things. Benito didn't pan out right away, and the second they reached for Montreal Washington, but the rest of the picks I actually thought were good picks. So I feel like this NFL and a lot of the analysts are really continuing to try and pile on the Broncos, right? They saw blood in the water, and they're just not going to finish until there's no more blood in the water and everybody's out, or they just keep picking it away at the carcasses until they're gone, kind of thing, right? So, yeah. I don't know. It's interesting.
And we're still. I mean, didn't we finish last at the division again last year?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, we're still in the basement. We're still not a winning squad, and we haven't been for quite some time. So, based on the fact that Russell didn't play well, with the fact that we haven't won in so long, the media is really piling on and saying, "Hey, well, this organization is not relevant anymore." So they're really just trying to find. You can see us trying to find excuses, or them trying to find excuses to kind of still pile on to say, hey, well, with all this, GM's not doing well, and this is our justification. I'm not saying it's right, obviously, but this is their justification for ranking him so low.
Yeah. Well, and to Mike Guess's point, the offensive line was a problem, but this year they went out and addressed it. I mean, they went out and spent the money. Now, whether that money was too much for the people that they got, I don't know. I'm not going to judge that until they play. If they all pan out, then it's worthwhile in my mind. But you're going to see a better offensive line. You're probably going to see better health, and you're going to see a better coach team. I would expect this team to be in the hunt for the playoffs. If they are not, that's a bit of a disappointment. I think they still got some holes to fill. Most teams do. So I think that most of this stuff is going to go away, especially if they come out of the gate winning some games.
Yes, I agree with you 100%, Mike S. Again, thank you for this comment. And as far as ranking them, yeah, Hackett number one. I think that was the main problem of there was not competency at coaching, so that was pretty much why this team kind of derailed. And
Right.
then definitely injuries. The injuries definitely did not help. We had just about every game someone going down with those soft tissue injuries, and that can definitely, um, you know, kind of weaken the team. And then offensive line, right?
Yep.
As we can see with the offensive line, it just wasn't strong enough, wasn't able to hold up at the point of attack, and we saw in free agency that got overhauled, it got addressed. So we'll see, how these players perform in this new system and scheme on the offensive line. But I am encouraged. I am glad with Sean Payton's hiring and his collaboration with George Payton that they were able to address the offensive line because that was a glaring need. And I know it's maybe another topic for another day, but there's still a hole on the offensive line, at least in my opinion,
Yeah.
with center, because we'll
Yep.
see what they do there. And definitely with
Yep.
Wilson. Again, I know Wilson hasn't been the biggest reason for all of their issues, but he did contribute to some of it because he did not play his best ball last year, as we know. So
Yeah. No, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to defend George Payton. Like I said earlier, he's had made some mistakes, right?
mhm.
I said the Gregory trade or signing was a mistake in my mind. I think Von Miller trade was a mistake in my mind. The Hackett hiring was a mistake. But I don't think I can knock him too much because other GMs were trying to get Hackett. He was a hot commodity. Dallas tried to re-sign Gregory. I can't knock him too bad, but the thing that is going to be more helpful to GM to his tenure now is a competent coach who he can work well with, who has a history of working well with the GM, finding good draft picks, and creating a solid team. And the other thing is the ownership is now in place. It's been in place for a while. They're getting their feet under them. That's going to help too. You can't just have one person doing all the decision making all the time. You got to have the other people to help, make sure that they're making the right decision. They're not always going to make the right decision. They're not. But it's one of those things that it's helpful to have a team around you that's competent, and that's what he has now. So Gary Palmer coming back in. Thank you, man. Another super chat, man. We really appreciate that. And
Thank you,
he
Gary.
says, when I hear the blame being given, I remember Sean saying there's dirt on a lot of hands. And I think that's about right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you think about Hackett coming in and hiring his guys, right? He got rid of a lot of coaches that people were kind of scratching their head and brought in like Butch Berry instead of Munchak and brought in some of these other guys that, they were first to go. So there is a lot of dirt on everybody's hands. You're right. You're right, Gary. You can't just blame one person for the debacle that happened last year.
And Gary, you're absolutely correct, 100%. And again, I think we outlined that, or Mike S in the previous comment outlined that by mentioning four different factors, that went into this debacle last year. And of course, there are way more than just the four, right? But Hackett, Wilson himself, the offensive line, the injuries, right, with Lauren Landau, some of the position coaches, George Payton himself. So there's enough blame to go around. And everyone's at fault to a degree for this debacle last year. I 100% agree. But with Sean, again, it's all going back to coaching. Zach Kelberman always says coaching, 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 and we have the shirt with that. What we have that in place, and now that that's established, I think everything else will kind of fall in line, and we will see the complexion of this team change. Again, we're already starting to see it change. What happened in free agency? because I feel as though if we did not have Sean Payton in place, now I know George Payton still may, if we were to have another coach, let's say for instance, we may onesie twosie start to address the offensive line for years to come. But in my mind, Thomas, this was a massive overhaul of the offensive line this
Yep.
season for sure in free agency. Right. Ben Powers at guard, Michael Glinchey at right tackle. So I know the center position obviously still up there. We'll see what happens there, right? But with this overhaul at the offensive line, again, we should start to see this team kind of do better, play better. But yeah, I think now with Sean Payton at the helm, there shouldn't be much blame to be given. There should be more small wins as this team starts to win. We'll start
Sure.
to see that next year.
Absolutely. We got Naj coming in. Thank you for coming in with a super chat.
Thank you,
We,
Naj.
again, appreciate all your support. We appreciate everybody's support on here. But Naj, thank you. You're here in the chat often and you're supporting us often. So we really can't say enough about how much we appreciate it. But Naj says, I think the Wilson pickup will work out. Hiring Hackett and letting him build an experienced staff, bringing back Gordon, signing players with injury histories, all hurt Peyton. He may not be the worst, but I get the ranking. So Naj is he's all right with the ranking because of some of the things that he did. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Gordon was a debacle bringing him back. He coughed up too many games for sure. And injury history players, I get that. I don't know who to blame for that, but the Randy Gregory signing was bad in my mind for sure. So you're right. Hiring Hackett, obviously letting him build that experience step. There are some knocks on George Payton. I guess my feeling on the whole thing is people are continuing to pile on the Broncos because it's easy to do, and they ranked him last because it's an easy one to target. But it's a head scratcher to me. Some of these other gyms that they have ranked higher who haven't done anything else and who've made the same mistakes. So or worse mistakes in my mind. So it's interesting. It's still interesting to me that if these would have been written up in the early offseason last year, they would have ranked George Payton way higher
Mm-hmm.
than last place. He would have been much, much higher because they were singing his praises for getting Russell Wilson. They were singing his praises for going after Randy Gregory, and people liked the Nathaniel Hackett hire. It didn't work out, but it's one of those things that the rankings to me are kind of worthless though. It's like power rankings. I mean, we're talking about it because it's fresh and it's interesting, but at the same time, like it won't matter if the team wins. It doesn't matter what NFL.com ranks George Payton. They can rank him last every year, but if the team is winning and contending, who cares?
Yeah, I agree with you there, Thomas. No, I get what you're saying, and I agree with the first sentence here, right? Of again, I think it's hiring Hackett. That's the big thing, and of course, all the other things follow. But I still don't get being ranked dead last. It's that's where I think that's where you're losing me, and I don't see what happened being warranted a last ranking just because of all the, and maybe I might be looking at this differently, Thomas. Of I look at all the good George Payton has done, right? Through the draft. Obviously, getting PS2, even the move to get Russell Wilson. And I'm looking at all this good. And granted, that one hiring of Hackett does overshadow a lot, but I feel as though we should still hold his drafting and even the ability to get Russ to a higher regard than letting the higher Hackett kind of just overshadow it. And again, it was just a 1 year sample of what George Payton did. So I think when you look at it from those two different perspectives, Naj, I still don't get the dead last. That ranking still doesn't make sense to me. Now, some of the things he did with Hackett and how all that transpired does push him a little bit further down that ranking list. That's why I said maybe 10 to 15 range, maybe at the 15 range would be maybe a more realistic spot for him. But granted, what all George Payton did, I still don't see it being justified as a dead last ranking. Obviously, and also who all was ranked above him. Like some of these GMs that were ranked above him, I'm like, I don't necessarily agree. So again, that spot is kind of where I have a problem.
Yeah, and let's think about it. Look at his drafts have been really solid. I mean,
Yeah.
Pat Surtain, that was a great pick. I don't care if people are saying they should have drafted Justin Fields, right? He's going to be an All Pro for a long time. You got Quinn Miners, who's going to be a starter. You've got Baron Browning. If he can stay healthy, he's going to
Yeah.
be really good. You got Caden Stearns, who's stepping into the starting row. You got Jonathan Cooper, was a 7th-round draft choice,
Mhm.
who came in and played well. And then this year you've got a couple more starters that are already penciled in. I mean, he had some good drafts. It's not like he's been a complete failure. So he's had good drafts. And this year they made some pretty solid free agent moves. I didn't really like a lot of his free agent moves last year, but everybody ends up with some really kind of poor free agent moves. But I think that also has the fact to do with there was a lot of inexperience that he was starting with the coaching staff. I mean, I think the coaches talked him into drafting Montreal Washington way too early. So now you don't have that same thing. You've got an experienced guy at the head coach. You've got experienced position coaches for the most part, and you have a really solid ownership group. And I think it's going to even get better when it comes to the free agencies signings down the road as they continue to do that. And I think they're going to have solid drafts going forward. And that's what you want your GM to really do.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to bring in the players that are necessary to make the team better. And so far he's done a fairly good job. He's done a great job in the draft, I think, and he's done an okay job in free agency. Obviously, we have to judge this free agency on what we're going to see in 2023. But I mean, I love the Ben Powers signing, and I think the Zach Allen signing was pretty solid as well. I mean,
Yes.
I think the jury's still out on McGlinchey, but he was a very sought after free agent as well. And you can talk about overpaying him all you want. I don't care. It's not my money as long as it doesn't hurt the team signing somebody else. And so far, that has not been the case. They went out and got who they wanted.
Yeah, and McGlinchey is way better than what we've had. Right tackle, right? So I'm not, what he did in San Francisco. I'm really not concerned. It's again, and then picking up Ben Powers from the Ravens has also been great. So again, we can look at again what the Nathaniel Hackett. Again, it's all recency bias, at least for me. It was George Payton's decision to hire Nathaniel Hackett, and then Nathaniel Hackett was way over his head. And obviously, all these things kind of trickle down as a result. But I would like to see what this list looks like after next year, right?
Yeah,
Once the
for sure.
Broncos start winning more games, let's see how it's altered there, right? Of George Payton having a hand in getting Sean Payton and being a catalyst for a lot of these free agent moves. Let's see what happens after this year. So again, that ranking of 25 is still, again, it doesn't justify him being that low based on what he has. And we
Yeah.
have Zebulon Omega Kevin Lynn coming in. Thank you, Zebulon. We appreciate you. He says from Facebook, he says the Seahawks were shopping Russell and many teams were sniffing around it. He was supposedly almost traded to the Eagles. So that number one GM almost did the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we've been
Yeah.
saying. They're knocking
Yes.
him because he had a poor year. Every Hall of Fame quarterback has a down year.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the history. They all have had a down year, especially compared to their peaks. Maybe that some of them weren't at this level bad, but they all have had that down year. So you're right. Other GMs would have made that same decision. So I agree with you, Kevin. This is what we're talking about here for sure.
Yeah, I agree, Kevin. You hit the nose right on the head. I mean, the number one ranked GM almost did the same thing, right?
Right.
And we can say obviously with Harry Roseman, they're just getting to the Super Bowl. Again, I can see the case for maybe one or two other GMs maybe getting a little bit above. But I'm okay with Harry Roseman being number one just because of what they did with Jalen Hurts in this year, obviously. But again, it's that GM of even just last year tried to do the same thing of acquiring Russell Wilson just because they wanted stability at the quarterback position, just like
Yep.
Denver. So
Yep.
if that is one of the knocks for why George Payton is ranked last, it shouldn't be. And that it was just unfounded, unwarranted, at least in my opinion. And now that we do have, again, all this noise should go away. Now that we have Sean Payton at the helm with better coaching, and we should start to see a better team.
Yeah. We got Naj coming back in to talk a little bit about Randy Gregory and the edge rushing. And I'm with you, Naj. Naj says we need Randy Gregory to get 8 to 10 sacks, see improvement from Barron, and think the defense can be top 10. I'm most worried about the pass rush. I'm too. And it goes back to what you said. Randy Gregory has not been on the field. He is not consistently on the field. I've talked about that was why I knocked him when they signed him to begin with. He has to be healthy. He's got to play at least 15 games and get after the quarterback. I like Baron Browning too. I think Baron Browning is going to be a stud, but he has to be healthy as well, right? Because he struggled with injuries too. So yeah, I'm with you. I think the pass rush is a lot more disconcerting to me than other positions, and that has to do with health. If everybody can stay healthy, I think they'll be fine. But in my mind, that they haven't shown that they can. So and then who do you have coming behind him? You've got Nick Bonito, who hasn't really shown that he can be a starter. Jonathan Cooper has played admirably. Don't get me wrong, but what's behind them? If they don't stay healthy, who do they have coming in behind them? I really like Christopher Allen. He didn't play at all last year. He was on injured reserve. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a contributor on that pass rush. But you're right, Naj. I think the pass rush is worrisome, and that has to do with health and staying on the field. What do you think, Ron?
And that's why I believe I mentioned in last week's pod. Again, thank you, Naj, for your comments and generosity. Much appreciated. And that's why I mentioned in last week's pod of edge being a concern, it being a need, just because we don't know with Randy Gregory. And I agree with you, Naj, in the sense of that would be ideal for Randy Gregory. 8 to 10 sacks for sure. We could definitely use that. But it's, will he be there to give us those 8 or 10 sacks? And that's the concern I have. Obviously, with Baron Browning, we've seen what he's been able to do at edge. He's been great. I think that's a better fit for him. Obviously, if he can stay healthy as well, but it really depends on you know if Gregory and Baron Browning can stay healthy, what Nick Benito can do. If he's able to bulk up and get presence as a pass rusher, that just remains to be seen. And we can't, obviously we would want that in an ideal state, but again, we can't bank on that. And that's why I can see the Broncos, as they draft later, looking at an edge player or two, right? Just to shore up because we just don't know.
That's right.
Those are big ifs.
We got Ryan coming with a suggestion that Russell Wilson was playing the long game, trying to get Sean Payton here in Denver by playing badly. That's interesting. I hope that's not the case, but it would be it's a masterful move if he planned it out that way. So I think that was interesting. Man, if he did, that was quite the chess match that he played. But I hope it wasn't the case. I hope that was just, as we said, the offense didn't fit him and whatnot. We got Mike S coming in also to say that the Broncos must draft a center in the third round. And I agree, Mike. I've been saying that, and it's not just because Cushenberry has stumbled and hasn't played well. Regardless of whether or not Sean Payton thinks they can resurrect him or not, both of the centers, even the one Kyle Fuller, who they drafted, are going to be unrestricted free agents. So they've got 1 year left, and I think Fuller was only a 1 year deal. So they have to draft a center really to just prepare for the future at the very least. They have to be ready for the future because I'm not sure they're sold on Wattenberg. I don't know how you feel about Wattenberg, Ron.
Yeah, I'm not sure with Wattenberg. I mean, we'll see. I'm not quite sold on him yet, and I agree with you here as well. Of Mike drafting a center. I mean, it may not be in the third round, but they need to definitely look at drafting a center at some point during the draft, just because we just don't know on Cushionberry. I'm still concerned.
Yeah.
And what we all saw last year, it gives you pause, and we don't know. Now I'm glad that they got Fuller right from Seattle. We'll see how that happens, kind of as a fail safe. But you need that guy, even if you bring him in, to kind of just develop him,
Yeah.
right? So we don't know how Cushionberry is going to fit with his offensive line coach, the scheme, right? The coaching. Well, hopefully he does, right? But we just can't, again, we can't bank on that. So that's why, Mike, I agree with you that center should definitely be a focus in this upcoming draft for sure. Again, maybe not third round. I mean, it would be nice if it's the third round, maybe later round, but it definitely needs to be a focus.
We got Michael Ronquillo coming in with Facebook stars. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Mike.
Michael. It's glad to see you here. I was wondering if you were going to be in. We hadn't seen you in the comments, so thanks for being here. You're the legend, of course. You and Gary, always coming in. Michaela, the people that we met, the meet and greet. Everybody, it's wonderful to have you here. So thank you for coming in. Michael says, "Good evening, Thomas Hall and Ron White on the Orange and Blue View. Go Broncos and Buckham." Yeah, it was. Thanks for that. Sending that picture, Michael, of the Mile High Insider shirt. So we got the swag out there. Don't forget to check it out at the Mile High Huddle merch store. I'm not quite sure on the address, but it's out there. You got Mile High Huddle shirts. You got. Hopefully, we'll get an orange and blue, some orange and blue swag coming on. There it is. MHHmerch.com. That's where you Michael got it. So yeah, definitely. Check that out. See if you like some of the shirts and hats and other things that are out there. Coffee mugs. So appreciate it. We got Naj coming back in with another super chat. Thank you
Naj.
so much.
Man,
This is
awesome.
wonderful.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate you being here. And Naj says, brothers, do you see the Broncos focusing on edge in the third round or possibly trading a player, not sure who, to try and move up and get another O lineman or edge guy? That's an interesting question. Ron, I've been jumping in here too early, so I'm going to let you jump in there. I have my thoughts on their third round scenario, but of course I could be wrong. But what do you think? Do you think that they're going to go after an edge rusher?
In the third round, again, thank you, Naj. But potentially, I mean, I can see them possibly looking at edge in the third round. Again, based on some of the concerns that we just outlined, Thomas, with Randy Gregory's availability, and then injuries from him and Van Browning, Nick Bonito taking that next step. So with all those concerns, edge in the third round's not out of the realm of possible. Um, but trading a player to try to move up, that I don't see. The way I see it is within the third round, they're staying put where they are. And I know there have been some talk out there that the Broncos may even move down, to acquire more picks. So maybe moving down or staying where they are and then looking at, an O lineman or edge guys in those later rounds. Because that's how I see it.
Yeah. I'll tell you my feeling on their 2 third-round picks back to back. If they get the guy that they want, whether it's edge or center or whoever offensive lineman, if they get the guy that they want at that third round, I can see them trading that second, third round to accumulate more picks. I don't think they can move up. I don't think they have enough power, draft power to move up. It is possible. I mean, there's still rumors going around about trading Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. So that's still a possibility. It's still on the table. I feel like if they really wanted to do it, they would have done it already. But again, I mean, other GMs might get a little desperate when their wide receivers are off the board before they can draft. So they send a little bit more than they want to send or have been, trying to give the Broncos for one of those guys. It could happen on draft day. I'm not really sure. As far as drafting an edge guy in the third round, I'm a little leery about it because I want my edge rusher to be a dynamic impact player. And finding an impact player in the third round at that edge has been pretty hard if you look at the history. I mean, it's only about a 12% chance of doing that. If you look at the probabilities for edge rusher, when you can go after, a capable offensive lineman and have a 50-50 shot at hitting on an interior offensive lineman. So if you're going after a center, you got about a 50-50 chance of having, a good starter hopefully better than Cushenberry. But yeah, it's a tough one to say. But I for some reason I just have this feeling if they nail their guy that they want, they'll trade back. And
Yeah.
someone in the chat mentioned the NDSU
Hmm.
lineman Mauk. I don't think he's going to be around. I don't think he's going to be there. I think he's gotten way too much hype going in. He's a good player. I think someone's going to get him before the Broncos have a chance. But if they if he does drop that to that, I think they'll jump on him.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player, versatile, can play different positions. So yeah, I think it's a possibility. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a hard thing to say. I have after they drafted Benito in the second round and then going after another one in the third is a little bit tough for me to swallow. If they had 8 picks, then yes. But and I like Todd. Todd's coming in talking about Doomerville, fourth rounder. Absolutely. Elvis Doomerville was a fourth rounder, and I had a mile high legend about him and his fax fiasco, which was really fun to talk about. The reason why he dropped is because of his height. He was 5'11", but what they didn't realize about Doomerville was his arm length was that of someone much taller. In fact, his arms were longer than Aiden Hutchinson, who was drafted second overall or
Yep.
third overall in this last draft, and he was 6'7". So Doomerville, they looked at his height, but they didn't understand that his leverage and his arm length were so much built for that edge rush position, even for his height, that caused him to drop. But it was a mistake. That was a mistake for him to drop. But you're not going to find Elvis Doomervilles in the fourth round very often, or in the third round. I mean, he was just a great pass rusher with long arms and great leverage, and he knew how to get after the passer, right? He knew how to rush the passer. He had plenty of pass rush moves, and he was athletic. But he's a unicorn, right? That's you don't find that very often. But yeah, thanks for being here, Todd. I'm glad that you're in. And you're talking about Trevor Price. Trevor Price is first rounder, excellent interior pass rusher. And yeah, you don't find those dynamic pass rushers very often outside the first and kind of second rounds. You got to be really lucky. But yeah, Trevor Price, one of my favorites. One of the I would say one of the most underappreciated Broncos when he was here. Excellent interior pass rusher.
Yep. And then we got William coming in here, Catalano. Thank you, William. And he says if we go edge for a power guy, we have to go for a power guy. We have a few guys. I want a power guy to have 2 on him to free up other guys. And I agree, William. It really depends on who is there when we do pick in the third round, for edge. We definitely need more of that power presence coming in. So that's who I would want if the focus is edge on in that third round, at least in one of the picks. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have options. I think they're going to have to get somebody maybe for the future depth, because some people are going to walk. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I'm not really going. I don't really care power, or I want somebody that's dynamic who can get after the pass rusher, who not just pressure the pass rusher. As has everybody watched in that Super Bowl, they got after Mahomes. He was still beating them. They need to sack the quarterback. I want someone that has pass rush moves, who has bend, who can get around the corner and get to the quarterback and actually sack the quarterback. I'm not as big a fan as a lot of people on pressures. I think the good quarterbacks can beat pressure. So I don't care who it is, whether it's power or a more finesse guy. They need to be able to get sacks, and that's a big thing for me. And I still want to I think Christopher Allen might be that guy. I know he was undrafted. He was injured. He fell out of the draft. He has some power, and I think he might surprise some people. That's what I think. So we got a lot of people jumping into the chat about these old timers. Simon Fletcher, Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg was a 12th rounder, absolute steal of a 12th rounder. He should be in the Hall of Fame. William Hayes coming in with that. Yeah, 12th round. Back when they had 12 rounds in the draft. It was awesome. People talking about Simon Fletcher. You can find some good draft some pass rushers later, but like I said, it isn't easy.
Yeah. All right. And let me see. I don't see anything else. So we can start to wind it down now. Again, thank you guys for your time on this lovely Saturday. We know we appreciate you as always. And If you don't remember anything from today's episode, please remember these three things. Make sure you hit that like button on your way in. Share on all the platforms and subscribe if you haven't already, as our staff, Dylan Vaughn Arts, mentions. And of course, check out the Mile High Huddle store. We definitely have lots of merchandise on there for our non Broncos country. And then we get in. Any other comments here, Thomas? Any other parting words for the
No, I just
listeners?
want to say thank you for everybody coming into the chat. We appreciate you being here on a Saturday night. I know it's not easy, and thank you for chatting with us. I mean, we don't always agree on everything, but it's always great, especially when we start to, bring in some of the older old timers like Mecklenburg and Simon Fletcher, who Simon Fletcher to me is the most underrated player in NFL history in my mind. But anyway, yeah, appreciate it, and thanks for all the support, man. This is it's great, and it's great comment, great back and forth, and like I said, we don't always agree, but we get better. Someone says something that to me that maybe I didn't agree with, but I think about it and go back and I check it out and maybe change my mind on the matter. So yeah, I appreciate it. So yeah, let's wrap this up, man. Thank you all, appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Naj. Thank you, Gary. All the supporters that came in. I'm probably forgetting anybody, but or somebody, but thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all for the comments. We appreciate you guys. Take care, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.